Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Elder Scrolls Lore. Now, today is actually a recommended topic. So lately, someone has asked that, or recently I should say, someone asked if I would go back and trace the Jarls of each holding back and essentially see how far those lines go. And interestingly enough, it's basically just the history of the Jarls throughout each holding now at this point. And so I decided to start with Windhelm, and something that was unique with Windhelm is that for at least the first couple eras, they kind of co-align of being High King and also the Jarl of Windhelm, so that is something that was a little easier to tackle. So hence why I chose Windhelm. Another reason I chose Windhelm is because it was founded by Ysgramor, who went on to create the first empire of the Nords, and this would make him not only Emperor, but High King of Skyrim and the Jarl of Windhelm. And essentially, Ysgramor ruled in the Merethic era, and this dates back to the earliest points that we know, which is before even the first era. But we do know that he does have sons, and that would be Yungol and Yulgar, but Yungol dies. Yulgar survived, and from what we know he does survive because the Ysgramor dynasty will continue on, and Yulgar will be the next in line who would rule Windhelm, but this was also in the Merethic era before we get any specific dates. The next time we actually do know of a Jarl will be Harald, and Harald was the 13th member of the Ysgramor's line and was born in 113 of the First Era. And essentially that meant that Ysgramor's dynasty still existed in Windhelm at least, and that is a little important for later on. He went on to reign for 78 years until his death in 221 of the First Era, and he outlived all but 3 of his sons. Hjalmar was the son of Harald and ruled from 221 to 222 and died of unknown causes, but looking over at Harald's age, it's a little safe to say that he may have died of natural causes, considering his father died at the age 103 or 108, I'm not too sure about that, I forgot to write that down. Now, next we have Viraj, and Viraj is either Hjalmar's younger brother or his son. It's not too sure, it's not a little clear on the information there. And essentially, he started his rule in 222 of the First Era, and he succeeded Hjalmar. What we do know is that in the year 240, he began conquering Morrowind and High Rock, and he also slaughtered a group of Iliad refugees in 243 of the First Era. And now, essentially, this is where things kind of get muddied, because we don't really get too much about Ysgramor's line afterwards. And here is where things also get a little weird with the capital shifts, and this is either under Galir or Borgias, or another High King in between this time, where Winterhold becomes the seat of power in Skyrim, and so whoever ruling Windhelm is kind of becomes unknown. We know that it shifted to Winterhold because Borgias ended up relocating to Winterhold, and he is Borgias of Winterhold, hence that's how we know that he was either born there or ruled there. So essentially, we don't know who is in Windhelm at this point, and I hypothesize that Wulfharth might be one of them. And the only reason I suggest this is because there is a plaque of him in Windhelm that could hint at it. But also remember that Olaf One-Eye also has a plaque in Windhelm, and he ruled out of Whiterun. And it's also should be noted that, Wulfharth was also from Atmora, and he was born there, so it's kind of difficult to suggest that whether or not he was actually the Jarl of Windhelm either, or at this time I should say. If it is true, he would have most likely ruled the same time he was High King, from 480 to 533, and to be High King I'm assuming you have to be a Jarl too, so I would assume that Windhelm would be the most likely destination for him at this point. So, for the First Era, that is all we know, and I know the First Era goes on for essentially another 2,500 years, essentially. We end here at 533 of the First Era, and the First Era goes on to 2920. So it's a little difficult to imagine or to even predict who would be ruling at this time. But in the Second Era, we do get information, and we do know that in 431 of the Second Era, Jarl Logrolf was ruling Windhelm at the time, and he was also High King, but he was assassinated. We don't know when he started his reign, but we do know that he was killed at 431. We also know that he's of Windhelm because his daughter Freydis would be crowned High Queen, and she ruled out of Windhelm, so essentially we do know that at some point she was crowned High Queen, and she was crowned at 431 as High Queen and Jarl of Windhelm at the same time, but we don't know how long she lasted. Next we have Mabjarn Flamehair, who could be related to Freydis. It's kind of implied due to her inheriting the Jarldom of Windhelm and her inheriting the High Queenship of East Skyrim, and she ruled from an unknown time to 572 of the Second Era, dying into the Akaviri invasion. Next we have Jarun the Scald King, who ruled from 572 of the Second Era to an unknown time, and assuming he lived a long life, he would have reigned into at least the 600s, due to him becoming Jarl and High King at the age of 26, and according to Helgrir Lutvoice in the Elder Scrolls Online, he was born in 546 of the Second Era, hence why he would be only 26 when he became High King. Then we have Ironskar, and he is the son of Jarun the Scald King, and assuming he doesn't die during the events of ESO or later on, or soon after, the Alliance War, right? He is Jarun's eldest, and he would most likely assume the throne here as well. And now sometime in the Second Era, Jarl Elgrir the Unminded ruled sometime, and it's unknown when or for how long he ruled, or what position he, like if he ruled before Jarun or after Jarun, so we don't really know when, but we know he was a Jarl at the time and he was killed in a revolt. So next we get into the Third Era. So in the Third Era, Windhelm's dominance began to fade, and as the Third Empire began to slowly take over, and in this case quickly take over, Solitude became the seat of power in Skyrim, and the seat of the High King resided in Solitude because of the Empire's influence there. So Windhelm's history wasn't really recorded, or at least given to us at this point. We do know at some point that Asgon ruled Windhelm during the Imperial Simulacrum between 389 and 399 of the Third Era. However, it's unknown how long he ruled or if he was related to anyone we've previously mentioned or someone we know that will later appear in the future. So lastly, we get to the Fourth Era. And the early Fourth Era Jarls are known, but they aren't known, but it's assumed that they might be related to the Stormcloaks. And the only reason I mention this is because Hogue Stormcloak ruled until 183 of the Fourth Era, and we do know that he reigned during the Great War, which was between 171 and 175 of the Fourth Era. So it can be assumed that the Stormcloaks somehow came to power before that as well. Now, Ulfric Stormcloak ruled from 183 of the Fourth Era to the present, and we, depending on how things go in the Elder Scrolls V, it could change and vary. He is heirless and wifeless, thus if he is killed, a new clan or person could take over or be assigned as the Jarlship in the Jarldom. But we do get hints of that, as if the Imperials take over Windhelm, it's revealed that Brunwulf Freewinter, a revered citizen of Windhelm, will be named as the Jarl. Although he is also unmarried as well, you can kind of guess at where things could go from there. But that is all we have today, everyone. So I've analyzed as much history of this as I could. I went all the way back to the Merethic era, and I've literally gone through thousands of in-game years to research all this. It's kind of difficult to suggest or find certain Jarls and see how far people can trace their lines back. And as of this, it looks like that Ulfric can't really trace his line that far. I would assume maybe a couple centuries, maybe more, he can trace his line back, but it's Ysgramor's line, who was the first of which to rule Windhelm, no longer exists. So it can be confirmed that that line no longer exists. And same with Jarun's. I would assume that Jarun's line no longer exists either, and those are some of the great Nords we get through this time period. So, yeah, that is all we have today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry the mic sounds a little off today. I had to use a different mic for this time, and I'm going to switch back over to another one afterwards, so it will hopefully clear up a little bit. But other than that, yeah, that is all we have today. And I'll see you all in the next video. Peace. If you just happened to stumble upon this video and enjoyed, maybe consider subscribing. If you are a returning subscriber and you enjoyed, please hit that like button. It really helps way more than you actually think it would. And I hope to see you all in the next video. Peace.